You're exhausted. And I don't mean the kind of tired that a good night's sleep fixes. Not the job. Not the commute. Not the endless screen time or the noise or the fact that you stayed up too late again. You're tired because you've been carrying something that was never yours to carry in the first place. Right now, and I mean right now, without realizing it, you're holding on to the memory of your coworker. Raising an eyebrow at something you said last Tuesday. You're holding your father's disappointment. The kind he never actually said out loud, but somehow you felt in your bones anyway. You're holding the version of yourself your friends expect to see walk through the door. The version your partner needs. The version that fits neatly into everyone else's picture of who you should be. And here's the question nobody actually asks. What would happen if you just put it down? Not quit, not go off the grid, not stop caring about the people in your life. Just set it down. Because here's the thing. The Stoics, men who literally ran empires, survived slavery, watched cities burn. They put this idea right at the center of everything they believed. And by the time we're done here, you'll understand why. But first, we need to talk about the weight itself. Nobody warned you about this part. From the second you were born, you started collecting. Opinions mostly. Little impressions that lodged themselves somewhere in the back of your mind. Your mother's face when you cried too long and she looked just slightly frustrated. The teacher who called on you and you got it wrong and the whole class heard. That group of kids. You know the one. A partner going quiet in that particular way. Not angry, just gone. Each of those left something behind. A tiny residue. Like a file your brain saved automatically without asking permission. And over years, decades really, those files stacked up into something enormous. A whole library of other people's judgments that you drag into every room you walk into. Every conversation, every decision, every time you open your mouth or just as often, choose not to. Psychologists actually have a term for this. Sociotropy. It's basically an excessive investment, psychological, emotional, in what other people think and feel about you. Research out of the University of Pennsylvania found that people who score high on sociotropy have significantly elevated rates of anxiety, depression, and burnout. And here's what's interesting about that. It's not because worse things happen to them. It's because they feel personally responsible for managing how every single person in their life perceives them at all times. That's a full-time job with no salary and no days off. And honestly, most of us are doing it. But here's what almost nobody realizes. The weight isn't real. It was never real. And a slave who lived 2,000 years ago figured that out long before any of us. His name was Epictetus, born into slavery in Rome around 50 AD. Owned nothing. Controlled nothing. At least nothing you could see. His master, a man named Epictetus, once grabbed his leg and twisted it. Badly. Permanently. And Epictetus, by the accounts we have, just looked at him and said calmly, "You're going to break it." The leg broke. Did I not tell you that you would break it? No screaming, no begging, no rage, just observation, almost detached really. Because Epictetus had already worked something out that his master, for all his power, never had. You can't control what happens to you, but how you respond, that's entirely yours. His student Arian wrote down the opening lines of what became one of the most influential philosophical texts in history. And those lines are almost frustratingly simple. Some things are in our control and others not. That's the whole thing, basically. That's the foundation. Your body, not yours to control. Your reputation, not yours. What other people think of you, absolutely not yours. And anything that isn't in your control, not your concern. Now, and this is where people tend to get it wrong. Epictetus wasn't teaching coldness. He wasn't saying feel nothing, care about nobody. That's a misreading. What he was actually saying is something far more unsettling. The opinion someone has of you lives inside their head, not yours. You can't reach in there and change it. You never could. So why are you paying rent to live in a house that belongs to someone else? Here's the part most people miss entirely. When you care, and I mean really care, not just politely register, what someone thinks of you, you're not actually thinking about them. You're thinking about a version of them. A mental construction of what they might be thinking about a mental construction of you that you're performing for an audience that, honestly, mostly doesn't exist. Sit with that for a second. You're burning yourself out managing a relationship between two people who aren't fully real. Alan Watts put it well. He was drawing on Eastern thought mostly, but it applies here. We suffer not from the events of our lives, but from our judgments about them. But there's a layer beneath even that. We suffer from anticipating judgments that haven't even happened yet. Think about the last time you sent an email and then spent the next hour wondering how it landed, or said something in a meeting and spent the rest of the afternoon replaying the room's reaction, or posted something and then kept checking, compulsively, almost against your will, who responded and how. That's not caring about people. That's not connection. That's surveillance. You've essentially turned yourself into a threat detection system, running constant assessments of your social environment, and it never switches off because there's always another room, another conversation, another potential judgment somewhere on the horizon. The Tao Te Ching, written around 500 BC, so this isn't exactly new thinking, says it plainly. Care about what other people think and you will always be their prisoner. Not their critic, not their disappointment, their prisoner. And the bars on that cell, this is the part that should genuinely unsettle. You put them there yourself. Let's get concrete for a second. Because the emotional cost is real, but I want to talk about the practical cost too. In 2010, a team at Harvard ran what became known as the mind-wandering study. They reached out to 2,250 people throughout the day in random times via an app and asked two simple questions. What are you doing right now? And are you thinking about what you're doing or something else? 47% of the time, people's minds were somewhere else entirely, nearly half of every waking hour. And the single largest category of that wandering, social concerns. What someone said, what someone might think, how that conversation went, how the next one might go. Half your mental life, not spent on your actual life. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome. Around 161 AD, probably the most powerful individual alive at that moment, wrote about this in his private journal. A journal, by the way, that he never intended anyone to read. So there's no performance here, no audience. Just a man being honest with himself. How much more damage anger and grief do than the things that cause them? He wasn't talking about armies, wasn't talking about political enemies. He was talking about the internal cost of carrying other people's words and judgments into every moment of your life. The man who commanded legions was dealing with the exact same thing you're dealing with. And here's what he actually did about it. Most people get to this point. They read the philosophy. They nod at Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius. Something shifts. And then they walk back into their day and nothing changes. Because understanding something and actually practicing it are completely different things. The Stoics knew this, which is why they developed specific exercises, not just ideas. The first one is called the view from above. Marcus Aurelius used it regularly. The practice is simple. When you feel someone's opinion pressing down on you, pause and mentally zoom all the way out. You're a person, on a street, in a city, on a continent, on a planet, in a solar system, in a galaxy among hundreds of billions of other galaxies. And somewhere in all of that, someone's opinion of what you said at dinner last Tuesday is, what exactly? This isn't nihilism. It's not nothing matters. It's perspective. The Stoics called it subspecie, aeternitatis, seeing things under the aspect of eternity. Not to dismiss your life, but to get clear on which parts of it are actually yours. The second practice, Epictetus, called it the dichotomy of control, was basically a daily audit. Every morning, he'd ask himself one question. What's in my control today and what isn't? His opinions, his actions, his judgments, his. Everyone else's opinions of him, not his. And therefore genuinely not his concern. Not because people don't matter, but because wearing yourself down over things you literally cannot change isn't caring. It's self-destruction, just slower. Okay, here's the part nobody says out loud. The real reason you carry everyone's opinion of you isn't weakness. It's not low confidence. It's not some character flaw you need to fix. It's that somewhere very early on, probably earlier than you can remember, you learned that other people's approval was tied to your safety. When you were a child, your parents' opinion of you wasn't just emotional. It was survival. Being seen as good, acceptable, lovable. That wasn't vanity. That was a genuine biological necessity. And your nervous system absorbed that lesson completely. The problem is you're not a child anymore. The people whose opinions you're carrying can't actually hurt you the way your nervous system still believes they can. They can't take away your ability to eat, to sleep, to exist. But your nervous system doesn't know that yet. It's still running a program it learned 30 years ago. The real work, not the self-help version, not the affirmations, is teaching your nervous system something it never got to learn. That you are safe even when someone disapproves of you. Nietzsche put it in a way that stuck with me. The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try it, you will be lonely often, and sometimes frightened. But no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself. Owning yourself, not performing yourself, not defending yourself, not managing some curated version of yourself for an audience. That's mostly in your head anyway. Owning yourself. You'll still care what people think. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. That doesn't fully go away. And honestly, it probably shouldn't. You're human. And some degree of social attunement is just part of the deal. But there's a difference, a real, meaningful difference, between considering someone's perspective and carrying it, between valuing a relationship and surrendering to it, between being loved and performing for love. Epictetus lived in chains, literal ones, and he was freer than almost anyone around him. Not because he felt nothing, but because he knew, with real clarity, which things were actually his to carry, and which ones weren't. Put down what isn't yours. Not all at once. Not perfectly. Not as some permanent state you achieve and then you're done. Just today. See what it feels like to move through the world, carrying only yourself. Think about it.